Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Tiff Talks Tech. Today, I'm excited because I'm joined by Kim Boland, who is the Senior VP of Marketing at AION Management. And today, I'm excited because we're going to be talking about short-term strategy and turning major events into revenue in multifamily. This all stemmed from, I saw a post that Kim posted about the World Cup and doing short-term rentals around that. And it is something I got really curious about and wanted to explore even more. So I'm excited to talk with Kim about this and kind of dive into it. Before we get started, Kim, could you share a little bit about your background and your experience in multifamily?
Sure. So I've been in multifamily for, my goodness, 16 years now. It's gone really fast. When I started, it was the beginning of Facebook. And rolling that out. And as things have progressed, led marketing departments over this past 16 years. So, I've really been in the thick of the digital marketing world. Like I said, from Facebook to where we are now, I'm fully involved. My hands have been in everything. I love change. I know that scares a lot of people. I love change. And I think that as the technology progresses, I'm in.
Yeah, I think that's such a good sign in a marketer in general. Like, we always have to be changing with the trends for sure. So I want to talk about like big picture strategy when it comes to short-term rentals. When you think of big events like the World Cup or the Olympics, what kind of opportunities do you think are there for multifamily operators?
Right. So I've done a lot of digging into this and I've spoken to a lot of people. We have multifamily as a whole has so many locations around big cities,
Yeah.
especially around places with colleges. And a lot of colleges fall into a lot of these major cities where these events are. And there are so many college properties, right? That sit vacant in the summer months
Yeah.
in regards to, say, the Olympics or World Cup. Those are very specific because they're during the summer months. And I know that a lot of student housing tries to increase lease terms or, they want to fill that vacancy or at least get money during that time when these units are
Yeah.
sitting vacant. So we have a lot of vacant units that are sitting around cities with events. And what are ways we can make money? We're all looking for ancillary income from places,
Yeah.
right? Some EV chargers, from, amenity fees, insurance, like any way we can make extra income. Why not actually rent the units we have sitting there and make some ancillary income, utilizing the
Yeah.
vacancy that we have while we have tons and thousands of people in the city.
Absolutely. What kind of sparked your interest in this in the first place?
I think it was a total random thought. I've actually thought of it
Yeah.
years ago. Years ago, I
Yeah.
was actually thinking about this. I happen to be married to somebody who, I lose during the World Cup. We're always at I can never find him. Anytime there's a game on, he, sitting watching the game at with a drink in
Yeah.
his hand. I've sort of like grown up by losing, a lot of time. And when I started at my previous company, I was sitting there and, like, we have these vacancies, like how amazing would that be? So that was when I
Yeah.
found out that America was getting the World Cup. So I don't know. That was years and years ago. And I just started to bring up this conversation again with, a few people at Optech last year being like, how amazing would this be? Like, what an opportunity. And that conversation started to flow. So I think it's just, as you
Yeah.
sit in these offices and you talk to, your peers,
Yeah.
sometimes ideas, right? This is how ideas happen. So I have been thinking about it for a long time, but now the time is right to be like, what if, right? And now that
Yeah.
multifamily has changed, so there's smart locks, there's self-guided tours, machines you can put keys in, right? There's more
Yeah.
opportunity now than there was 6, 7 years ago to almost do like a selfless check-in also. So the
Yeah.
time sort of coincided and it's really the right time, I think, and easier to do this in multifamily.
Yeah. My husband and I live right next to AT&T Stadium in the Dallas area, and my husband's like, "Should we buy apartments and like rent them out for the World Cup?" I'm like, "That sounds a little crazy." But
Or just rent your house out. Why not? You guys can go on vacation
yeah,
or get more money.
that's so true. Yeah. I know, I was like, "That's crazy," but I'd be more likely to rent out my house.
But the crazy part is, even thinking about it, is that people are going to Airbnb their apartments out, right? Like, I
Yeah.
think that current residents are currently thinking about this. And if you don't have that relationship now with I guess, Airbnb where they're offering there's like a connection now. I think there's a platform where you set it up on your sites and then residents actually can rent it out and pay you.
Yeah.
But I don't know how many residents are going to be like, hey, you want to share my income? Right. So
Right.
I think that a lot of prospects might be doing this already in thought process. Right. Why are they making the money when we can make the money as a management company?
Right.
Right. So,
Especially if you have a unit sitting there vacant. Like,
correct. Right.
what are some things that people should think about before deciding whether or not this kind of strategy is right for them?
I mean, I think that, well, if you have a lot of amenities, the
Yeah.
amenities, the safety of the current residents, is this going to be disruptive to the residents? Are they going to come back home loud for 2, 3 days? You don't want to also tank your reviews and be, right. These are thinking ahead,
Yeah.
right? Safety too. I think that doing this, you'll have to work with a platform. I'm sure you could definitely do it yourself and put it on, an Airbnb yourself, but you want to set yourself up for success. So you want to start using a platform where, they do the background check and they take care of the insurance. You also I highly recommend talking to your revenue management team if your company has it and being like, this is how much we can get for it. So I know that it's worth it. Like I said, smart
Yeah.
locks, making it easy. Are you going to have to hire more staff to handle it? Because if I'm coming internationally, my flight might land at 6 a.m., right? And I want to check in to my where I'm going to
Yeah.
stay. Hotel, somebody will be there. So do you need to pay extra staff, like that type of stuff? So definitely need to see if the money is worth it. But I think that if you're in an area, paying somebody an extra $20 an hour to make $500, $600 for one night, like why not?
Yeah, absolutely. Are there other things that operators should think about when it comes to ROI and what's really worth the effort and what's not?
I'm trying to think. Yeah, I think you have to put it out there. I mean, the income's just going to come, especially like this type of event. Looking at the dates of when it is, it's not for long periods of time. I think the World Cup comes into
Right.
cities like 1 week and then there's a break and then there's another week. But that's just thinking the World Cup. You're also thinking, say, the Indy 500, right? You're in Indy, that's like a weekend thing. You're having all these
Yeah.
people in, right? And then it's gone until the next year. So it's a quick buck. I don't know
Yeah.
anybody who has done it yet. So, the consequences that might come or the benefits, I think that you can have them leave amazing reviews. I think that would be huge for yourself and
Yeah.
their new status of somebody coming in. That was so easy. I had a kitchen, etc. I think that, even thinking, all right, even like the next step, like as a company, if you have a team, it's like, do you partner up with like an Uber Eats or like a grocery store? And, you put that stuff in there. And then, if I stay somewhere, I might not necessarily want to cook, but like if you can get a relationship, more ancillary income
Yeah.
by another company to bring in food or to, stock the fridge, etc.
Yeah.
Do you provide Uber? Do you have a connection with Uber? Because they're going to need to Uber around, etc. That type of stuff. There's a lot more opportunities to make money. I think that's the creative next step of how far your company wants to take it.
Yeah, totally. And then kind of thinking, you mentioned like one of the risks could be it's really loud that weekend or people are coming in and out. Are there any other risks that people may not automatically think of? Any ways to overcome them?
I think that a lot of companies have been in business for a long time and we've all seen
Yeah.
everything. So
Yeah.
right? I mean, we have people living there nonstop as it is. So I don't know if there's any more risk. I think the important part is doing the background check and the
Mm.
insurance of the company. Also, I don't believe, but I don't think somebody would come in. Another risk is would they destroy the apartment? I'm hoping not. Like you really have faith in people
Yeah.
that they're not going to come in. Like you wouldn't need to do a full turn. You would have to get
Right.
the cleaning service in there. But know, but that is something else. Like,
Yeah.
would you be prepared to have a team that could turn a unit quick? That
Yeah.
that type of thought process destruction. But there really is no difference between, I think, the people that we currently have living on our sites. Like I said, I believe most management companies have seen it all. So
Yeah. With some of the big events, usually, like you said, they're a weekend or they're very short. I know that it can be maybe considered a nuisance for current residents. How do we reframe the way they think about it so that it's not? a nuisance for them and that they are still satisfied even when there are people coming in and out.
I think that as a company, you need to just inform.
Yeah.
You just need to let your residents know there will be people in the area. You might, if you see anything, if you see something, say something, right? We want to know.
Yeah.
But to be honest, I think for the most part, if you're at an event, you're probably gone all day, right? You're not even there most of the day. So I think
Yeah.
that if anything would be more like an evening. But like I said, I think that the good in people, right? I think you have to
Yeah.
come in looking at this as the good in people, and that people will take care of your community just like they would if they were at a hotel. I mean, it really,
Yeah.
for the person who's staying there, they should not expect to behave any different than they would somewhere else.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
right.
I
And I
think
think,
about like when I was in college, I lived right next to the fairgrounds and I remember parking would get really crazy in the summertime when the fair was open. They had a bunch of extra tickets and they would give all the residents tickets. Like that was a really big perk that I enjoyed. And it doesn't have to be like that. I know some of these events can be really expensive, but if there is something nice that you could do for the residents, I think it's always an extra perk. And it always made me more like, okay, yeah, it's going to
yeah,
be harder to find parking, but I get to go to the fair.
yeah. I mean, that is true. You could offer your residents, something, a benefit to, having other people on site. But it also depends how many units you're renting, right? Summer
That
is
too.
in some of these places, it's prime season, so your communities are probably full. I think going into this, you need to look right off the bat if it's easier to have a furnished unit or a guest suite, right? Which are sitting empty anyways. So those are, I mean, if you have those now, that's easier. You don't have to get involved with the furniture company. You already have everything in place. So it's just getting people in and out. But you're not looking at hundreds and hundreds of people.
Yeah.
I think from what I put together, some data I had put together, you're looking at maybe 3 units, right? You're not
Okay,
looking at
yeah.
that many, right? So you have to
Yeah.
figure how many hotels are in the area, and then people want the next step. Sometimes hotels will surge prices, right? And then it's like, I want to come to the game. I've already paid for a flight. I've already paid
Right.
for the tickets. By now, I'm probably five to $8,000 in, right? I don't want a surge price of a really expensive hotel. And if I can be
Yeah,
close and not pay hotel prices, then I'm winning too, right?
totally.
So
Anything walkable so you don't have to pay for a rental car,
walkable,
like
right?
yeah. Have you heard of anybody renting out, like, parking lots for bigger events? I always see that being by the stadium. I see people renting out parking lots all the time.
I have not heard of it, but I mean,
Yeah,
people do that for their houses, right? And and
yeah,
fairs too. They charge 25, $30 for you to park your car. I
yeah,
think that's definitely another, if you have a community that has a lot of space, right? It's probably
yeah,
easier to drive in, rent your space out, and
yeah,
then to actually just take an Uber or a different, like a Lyft
yeah,
to the stadium, because then parking there could be atrocious. But
yeah,
that's also, if you don't want to rent your communities out, why not make ancillary income by a parking spot also?
yeah. I do feel like it can be a little more difficult because most communities are kinda sparse on parking, like, don't have a ton of extra, but
In
if you
cities,
do
yes. But,
yeah.
there are some really large garden styles that have a lot of parking spaces.
Mhm.
So, I mean, you really have to look to what you have, right?
Right.
Every situation is going to be different. Like I said, if you have like a college community, which does have parking spots and it's empty, why not, you could either charge to park or you could charge to rent the units. So I think
Totally.
that you need to look at your opportunities for the space that you have. It's not a one size fits all.
Yeah, definitely. Thinking about, I know you mentioned like Airbnb can be a really great platform. Are there any other tools or things that people should really look at before implementing this kind of strategy?
Yeah, so I think that, especially for a big event, Airbnb is one platform, right? So
Yeah.
you're on most eyes. I had mentioned in my LinkedIn post, I've been talking to a company called Flexhaus. So
Hmm.
they have already thought of this. They have the insurance. They not only is it an Airbnb, but it's, Verbo. They actually post it
Oh,
across the
cool.
board for you. So I think that part of it too is a lot of multifamily don't have the staff to do all
Yeah.
this stuff. So working with a company like Flexhouse to actually post it for you, they'll pull the photos from you. They already have a feed. They just grab everything. You give them the price, right? And they go forward and then they advertise it for you. So really it's less on your plate. You just handle the back end of coming
Yeah.
in, right? And making sure you have somebody on site to greet, the person staying there. The guest, I guess we need a name for
Yeah.
the guest, because they're not a prospect, right? The guest, and make that easier to use. It wouldn't be a lease. So it's also figuring out like where the money goes. They would also take care of that. Money goes into their system, and then they would just pay you based off of that. So I think utilizing a company like that sort of takes the stress off of it, and we do what we do best, and right, and let another
Yeah.
company.
Yeah. Are there any gaps that you see in the technology where you're like, this doesn't exist? I feel like
I
we're getting really good about technology these days. Like, I feel
Yeah,
like
and I feel
everything kind of exists.
and it's funny because that, you've worked in many companies before, right? Somebody starts playing with something and you're like, it'd be amazing if you could help me do this, right? And then you just talk to the
Yeah.
company and they're like, do, 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 it exists, right? So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that technology is so quick now that if it's something that we have not thought about, that companies are so quick to create it, they have such brilliant people working for them that you almost don't need to worry about that or wait for long periods of time. Like that roadmap has gotten shorter for some of these quick fixes. They're like, oh, that's so great. I can do it. Sometimes
Yeah.
as a company, you don't think of everything, but they can make things happen. And I think that
Yeah.
for people that are on site and work in the management companies, we look at things very differently.
Yeah.
So it might not be in the platform, but that doesn't mean it can't be there.
For
Like within a
sure.
day, right? Within a day or a
Yeah.
week.
Exactly. How do you think that the short-term rental model can help showcase your units and the property to attract future residents? Like, my mind was wandering for a second because I'm thinking about like, what if somebody is coming from out of state to visit apartments and you can offer them a night to stay at your community so they can test it out? Like, that would be a really cool thing. But do you think that there are other ways that impacts that?
I think I'll go right back. I think college, but like say it's Mother's Day weekend, right? Most graduations happen. You can never get a hotel if you don't book a hotel far enough advance, right? To
Mm,
go to a lot of these college graduations in these big towns, then you can't get a hotel room. I actually heard someone talking about that at Penn State, right? Like
mm,
that you can't that people stayed like an hour and a half away from the graduation, right? So if you can offer up you're saying like your multifamily community and have parents, et cetera, stay there, and your child happens to stay in the area, right? If they're staying in
yeah.
college, if they're staying in Penn State, it's like, I just stayed in this really nice community. Why don't you come live here now? So I think
Yeah.
that opens opportunities too at people whose children are traveling or, you know, change of job, right? I've already
Yeah.
stayed there. Someone has talked about it. It'll just be easier to find, a place to live for
Yeah.
someone stayed there one night and they recommended it to you. So,
Yeah.
I think
No,
that's,
definitely, and I mean word of mouth too, like, if somebody stayed there for the weekend and they have a friend moving to that area, they might pass the neighborhood along, like,
yeah.
you just never know.
Yeah, and I think you could really, if it works and you do a good job with these short-term rentals and you ask them to post a review, they might be more apt, almost like TripAdvisor, people stay in a hotel, they write a review right away. There's probably a greater chance to get reviews from the short-term rentals,
Yeah.
right? Which will then
Yeah.
help you score your Google score, etc. Because then they're not experiencing like the maintenance concerns and all that. They're just having a
Right.
really quick experience. Everything was great. They were wonderful. 5 stars, right? So,
Yeah.
thought process too, if you create a good experience for them, in return, they will help your reviews.
Absolutely. Do you see this being more of something that people will implement long term, or do you think it's something just when there are events that are popping in and out of cities that people will do just to kind of play off of that traffic?
My initial thought was the World Cup, and then it sort of like stems from there.
Yeah.
Like I said, I think that's really beneficial to some of these cities that do have that. But like I said, college graduations, like there are major events in a lot of cities. I think that's where you start to be creative within your
Yeah.
company of being like, what is going on here and what can we do, to fill this space. It might not work so much in small rural areas, but for
Yeah.
anybody who's in a city, or on the outskirts of a city, not even in the city. If you're like, you know, if it's easy to get in the city and they don't have to stay, I much prefer never to stay in a city, right? just on the outskirts and then easy to get in if there's public transportation.
It's
So that
usually a little more cost effective for people too.
yeah,
Like they don't want to pay the high rate of being in the city.
correct. So, I mean, I really think that as a company, you need to look at the creativity of it, right? And
Yeah.
see where we can help people come in.
Yeah. If someone is interested in kind of getting this started at their company, what advice would you give them about getting started?
I mean, I think it's a real internal conversation, but I also
Yeah.
think, speak to the vendors who have done this for a while. They have dealt with this. They might be able to bring up the thoughts. I think just
Yeah.
starting to ask questions. I think that it's more of an internal conversation. This is not just one person saying this, right? I think that
Yeah.
it's a conversation internally that you need to have, and you need to say, is it worth it? I can make 15, $20,000 on units that are sitting there anyways, right? A quick
Yeah.
money is a not. So I think internally it has to be starting that internal conversation, maybe designating one or two people to reach out to some of these vendors and start
Yeah.
these conversations just to see what comes with it.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely. I think that's great advice.
but I think
As we
we're
wrap,
looking ahead, right? If you're the World
yeah.
Cup, right, you need to look like renewals are already in, right? You already
Yeah.
know who's moving out for June of next year, right? Everybody has signed their lease. You know now how many units you're going to have vacant. So this is the perfect time. Like right now is the
Yeah.
perfect time to look in your system and say, we are going to have these many vacant units, right? So we can push
Right.
advertising. We can spend our usual lots of advertising, but on average, we still have 5 or 6 empty units by August, right? World
Yeah.
Cup is I think June through August. But if you look at when it's in your city and you know that this many people are going to move out, right? It doesn't even have to be an
Yeah.
upgraded unit. You can give them a classic, right? You don't even need to
Right.
push that. They will not mind. I think now is the time to start looking at your information and your data and saying, this could work for us. Let's
Yeah.
try it.
And start vetting the platforms that you think, because as we
Yeah.
know, sometimes it takes a while to get approved and make sure the
Correct.
pricing looks good and all that. So just start looking at that as
Yeah.
soon as you can. Yeah. Well, as we wrap up, how can people learn more? How can they connect with you and pick your brain?
I mean, I'm on LinkedIn, happy to always chat. Find me on LinkedIn. I love having this conversation. Like I said, I know a lot of people have relationships with Airbnb. You could talk to them. Like I said, reach out to Flexhaus. I'm going to spell it because it's not house. It's like Haus, or
Oh, yeah.
German,
Yeah.
Lexhaus. So, you could reach out to the website. There's
Yeah.
a contact form. And I just think I can give my advice, but I also think that people should do their due diligence, speak to the companies, see what is out there. There are companies that do this. I'm just a
Yeah.
huge advocate because I had this thought years ago. I'm like, oh my God, I want to make a change in this industry. I love making change. What's the next thing we
Yeah.
can do, right? We're all about AI now, but like, let's get people in, right? The AI is
Right.
a different product. Let's get back to the people. Let's find different ways, to fill our spaces. That's not AI. So
Right.
I think just asking questions, and I want people to start thinking. I think that's, I'm happy to have that conversation and think things through with people, but I would love to see this happen. I mean, I would really love
Yeah.
to hear major companies, try this out, or small companies,
Absolutely.
everybody.
Yeah, I love it. Well, I have one more question. This is something I ask all of my guests. It does not have to be related to this topic, but in your everyday life, is there a tech tool that you are loving right now and using all the time?
So Perplexity is my best friend. The amount of
I
times I
love
use that
Perplexity.
AI tool, I've signed up for, the next version. I'm not there paying the $200 a month yet
Yeah.
to utilize it, but I really, in my everyday life, like on my phone, just in life, it is one of my most favorite tech tools.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. I think this has been a great conversation, and I hope it inspires people to start looking into this for their strategy.
Me too. I would love for people to reach out. I'd love, comments. Let me know if you're doing it. I would love that.
Yes, absolutely.